Hello, welcome to the March 22nd, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Nuendo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. I'm going to do a quick audio test to make sure everything is coming through as expected. All right, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. As I mentioned before, my name is Greg Nuendo. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, primarily focusing on Steinberg products. And I'll be the host for the live stream today. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or simply ask your questions in the live chat field. My ability to answer the questions in the live chat, I will fall behind in my ability to kind of do like a real-time answer with the live chat. But we'll try to go through them chronologically and get through each of the questions in order as completely and succinctly as possible. So you can ask questions there. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase or Nuendo that you're running, in addition to, so you could say I'm running version 12, version 11, 10.5, I'm running LE, AI, Elements, Artist Pro, that information and which platform that you're using, that information is helpful. If you do not get an immediate response, we could try to refrain from asking the same question over and over again. That just kind of slows down the whole process. We'll try to get through all of the questions as fast as we can. Later tonight, after the live stream, we will have, I will go through and watch the live stream. I'll take a quick dinner break and rewatch the live stream and type up all of the topics with timestamps that are available so that you could navigate quickly to particular topics that you read, and those timestamps with the topics will be pinned to the top of the comments field. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to the website cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to set up that particular website. So we want to give a special thanks to Jan. So you could just kind of type in your question and it will search through all of the different topics we've covered on live streams and take you directly to that particular video. We have two people that serve as moderators, so Jazz Dude and Agent K. So I want to give a special thanks to them. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this to make it a better community for everyone that participates in the live stream. Also, I want to give, if you want to check out another wonderful use of resources that have been compiled, you could check out the Cubase Nation Discord, in addition to all the official Steinberg information. And Jazz Dude does a lot to compile that and have a lot of relevant information there. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, and if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. All right, so we see Walter Blackledge, who's a member of the Club Cubase user group in St. Louis, so great to see you. All right, so we have a question. Do you guys answer Nuendo questions here? So yeah, we answer Nuendo questions, any Steinberg questions that you may have. Okay, so we have a question from Oren. It says, hi, Greg, and it's good to speak with you yesterday, Oren, on the phone. Please tell me how to turn the sound on and off on the chord pads that I've never used, but I'm going to start using them. All right, so if we have chord pads here, so like I have just a sound loaded up, we'll just open it up to say just like a Rhodes patch here. And what I want to do is to have the chord pads, let's say if I have this particular track selected, I can click on the chord pads. So we can just click that. And if we don't want those to transmit MIDI data, we can just click here, and now we'll see that the chord pads aren't transmitting to the particular chord, to the selected track. So if I wanted to go to drums, we could play kind of chords like this if we wanted to, and not all these would be in range, but when we want to do, so we could transmit MIDI to the particular track that is selected, and then if we don't want to hear the chords as we work with them, we could just click in the upper left-hand corner of the chord pads, and then we could just turn that on or off directly there. So let me know if that helps. All right, so we see question, how may I reuse my download access code? So I think the download access code is just going to be utilized once. And once you have that, then it gives you the license either for, in our previous generations, for the USB e-licenser, or gives you a license for the Steinberg activation manager. So if you have it on the USB e-licenser, you could simply move that from computer to computer. And if it's on the new Steinberg activation manager on Cubase 12, at that point you could utilize it on 3 separate computers. All right, so great to see Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas and Stefan from Sweden. David Austin checking in from Nueva York. Thanks for joining us. All right, and we have Chris in Jersey, UK, Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Alfred from Montreal. I miss going to Montreal. All right, and we have Frank checking in from Kingston, Canada. All right, and we see Jan from Cubase Index. All right, and we have Greece checking in. All right, and we have Randall Gaffner, who's also in Alexandria, Virginia. He's on the West End, so yeah, I'm just in Fort Hunt area, kind of between Old Town and Mount Vernon. So great to see that you can make it, Randall. Thanks for being a part of the community today. All right, and we see Crocante. I'm not sure if it's Crocante or see Rockante. I probably pronounce it wrong every time, but he's checking in from Los Angeles. All right, so just see Nuendo 11, Win 10 when I export using Dolby Atmos 7.14 audio mixdown to channel renders in mono. So let's take a quick look. So make sure that if you have a 714 bus as well. So let's go and come over here. Let's get to Nuendo 11. And we're excited for Nuendo 12 to be coming out soon. Just open up a quick project here. Okay, so here, when we come over here, we're going to have, so I'm not sure if you have the VST renderer. So, and then also when you're coming into your renderer, so we could just say, okay, we want it to come over here and we could see the renderer for Dolby Atmos. So I'm not sure if you have that set up. So, often what you're going to have is going to be everything kind of sent to, 714 bus. But as we do this and we do our export audio mix down, so, we could have, so I'm not sure if you have this set, once we do this, if you have it set, to go through the, you need to have it go through the renderer for that to work. But if you could maybe, if you want to send a screenshot of what you have for the your output render settings and your Dolby Atmos renderer, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it at that, and you can send it to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. Okay. All right, we have Rich checking in from West Palm Beach. Thanks for joining us. All right, so you see a question from Jay from Connecticut. I noticed there's a sale for Nuendo version 10 plus below to upgrade to Nuendo 11 for the free upgrade to 12. Problem, no verbiage. Allows pre-purchase for 12 for version 11 owners. So currently, you know, we always run a grace period. So if you had just bought a new version and then, you know, so let's say you just upgraded to Nuendo 11 and Nuendo 12 comes out the next day, people would be upset. They're like, hey, I just bought this. And, you know, so, and now I had to pay for an upgrade. I missed it by day. So usually I think, you know, they started the grace period for it on March 17th, I believe, for Nuendo 12. So since Nuendo 12 isn't available to purchase, that's why you don't see any verbiage to a upgrade or update to Nuendo 12. So that's why you don't see it, because it doesn't exist and you can't update to it because it's not a product that's for sale. Okay, so we have a question. Can we change the way the name of the audio files are shown in the timeline segments? Okay, so I'm not sure. So let's say if you wanted to just change the names, you could come over here, and I think that there might be a preference for, so I'm not sure how you want to change the name. So if you wanted to see the name here in a particular audio file, and I think as you get to a certain vertical scale that the name isn't shown, but there may also be some preferences. Let's just see if it's under event display. So you could come over here, and if you don't want to see it, there is a show event names. So let's see if when we do that, we could get rid of the names. So right now we don't see any of the names here, but with under event display, we could just click show event names, and then you could choose to show it there. But if you wanted to hide, if I wanted to see it in a different way, let me know. Okay, so we see a question from Chris Hallam. Is there a quick way to use the Project Logical Editor to select MIDI regions to display parts in the key editor? I'd like to quickly switch between different instrument groups in key editor. Okay, so I'll come here and let me create a quick kind of more orchestral type thing. See if I have a project I was thinking of. Okay. Okay, so let's say I wanted to come over here and I wanted like woodwinds to be shown. So let's come to our Project Logical Editor. So we'll just come over here. Let's set it up. And okay, so I will say, So we want to select, and we will say media type is equal, or we'll say container type is equal to track, and name contains flute, and I will say, okay, we want to do the name contains oboe. And for this, instead of saying and flute and oboe, I'm going to say flute or oboe. And let's say, okay, we have bassoon. And we'll set this to or as well. So we're going to select all of these particular tracks. So we do this, we'll say, okay, we're going to select those particular names. And then at this point, we could say, I want to select all on tracks. For my post process, and then we want to just come over here and say, okay, I want to go to open key editor. Okay, so if I kind of did this right, let's say I have my horn selected and I wanted to save this, we could just come over here. So we're going to say we're going to take our container type is equal to a track, and we want to have the track if the name contains flute or oboe or bassoon, and then we could say clarinet and list other instruments if you want within kind of your template. So if I come over here, we can say apply, and now I could see all of the parts listed directly in the key editor. So we could just kind of do the same thing for naming a brass, naming percussion. So at that point, we could just see all of the particular events. So let's say I have my violin selected. I'll come here, and we could save this as a preset, and then that will automatically just open those particular elements up right there. So if I want to save this as a preset, again, you can say changes preset, and we'll just say we'll call it open woodwinds in key editor. So at that point, you could just kind of easily set those up so you could see exactly, and that will select all of the events. So if you have pauses, those events will be selected as well. So if we do this, and then we could also just colorize based on parts. So then each part could be a slightly different color as we work with it as well. So let me know if that works for you, Chris. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, we see Mark Rabin is on his phone. We have Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us, as well as Sir Robert from Atlanta. All right, we have Samson Strike joining again from Austria. And we have Alex from Hamburg. I miss going to Hamburg. All right, so we have a question from Kevin Anderson. I have Cubase 11. How do I play on key if I know nothing about notes running Windows? So once we go to a particular, let's say if we have an editor event open, so we could kind of create, we can add a MIDI track or an instrument track. And if we wanted to, just draw to create kind of a container part, we could do that, and then we could double click, and then you'll see over here something called the scale assistant. So here we could define the key, And we can say, okay, I want it to be in D major, and I want it to snap live input. So now, as I just wanted to come here, we could, if you want to do like step entry on particular events, I could just say, okay, we're going to do step entry from right here, and then anything that I just kind of put in. So when we activate step entry here, now any note. So anything that I just put in will automatically fit within the key of D major. So you could just kind of lock in keys there and be able to put in different, different scales. And then if you say snap your live input, everything that you just played will automatically be mapped to the particular key just that easily. So once again, just kind of create a blank part, double click, and then once you have the editor open, go to the scale assistant, set your scale, and choose snap live input. I'll erase that before I destroy a nice Schubert piece I enjoy. All right, so I just see why not use constant Q transform instead of FFT for spectroscope in Wavelab and spectrum bars visualization on Supervision plugin. So this, I know you kind of asked this in previous live stream, but yeah, I've never had anyone ask about constant Q transform. So I think a lot of people are kind of expecting the typical FFT when they see it. So I think that's probably why those meters are set up that way. But, I will pass it along in my monthly report for the live streams that you want to see that. All right, and we have Luca joining from Munich, outside of Munich, and Luis checking in from Argentina, Gerald from California. Great to see you, Gerald, back on. All right, and we have Razel from Denmark. All right, so we have a question from Yash. Hi, Greg. Watching from the UK, use Nuendo 11, Win 10. I would like to mix/master, do my final tracks in Nuendo. What is the best way to import stems from Logic X? Should they all be important? Should they be important as WAV files? I guess imported as WAV files. So anytime that you import audio files into a particular project, so let's say we do a new project, most people know how to make kind of equal length audio files that all kind of start and end at the same time. But if we go to import audio files, many times they will be time-stamped for us. So let's say if I'm just coming over here, okay, so let's say we come here to a particular audio file, and then there's one of the things that you could do is to place it at the timestamp. So most audio files can be like a broadcast wave file, and that will include kind of where the file starts. So, if you want to have all the files line up based upon their timestamps, all you'd have to do is select the event, and you can do this for multiple events as well, and say we want to move, and we'll choose move to events to origin, and that would automatically place the particular file at its origin time for you. So it's pretty easy. Just import the WAV files, and at that point you're just able to line them all up using the move to origin command. All right, so we have Costas Lioness checking in from Greece. Thanks for joining us. And Constantine K also from Greece. And Cornell Ward Music from Richmond. So Miss Gunna Richmond. Used to do a lot of work there at In Your Ear Studios with her club Cubase Richmond. All right, and we have Soren from Sweden. So question, is there any browser folder for Cubase 12 for sound packs / drum kits? So really all you have to do is just go to your MediaBay and you can see all of your different loops that can come directly here. If you wanted to go for drum kits, you could go to like VST Instruments and say, okay, I want to come over to, let's say, I wanted to go to, Groove Agent SE. I can see all my different kits right here. And we could do that. Now, if they're not kind of like Steinberg content, you could also just go directly to your file browser. And then you could go to this computer and you could search for different folder locations. And if it's a particular folder location, you're like, oh, I always want this available. You could right click and say add on a folder and say add to favorites. And then when you go home, we could just say, okay, I want to go to my favorites folder. And then you could just have access to all of your media and different contents from the right-hand MediaBay. Or if you wanted to see an extended MediaBay, you can see kind of more full scale here. You can say, okay, I just wanted to now look at all of my different samples or presets for different instruments or audio files and kind of more of a full screen view. But you could just do that by clicking on media in the right hand zone, and then you could navigate to all of your different media types and presets, instrument presets, wave files, loops, etc. All right, so we have Davey checking in, watching from France. Thanks for joining us. You see Fozzy69 saying MIDI remote, a game changer. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool too. All right, and we have Disc from Amsterdam and BN checking in from India. Fozzy's from London. So question, hi, when I render in place, it automatically changes to format into a broadcast WAV file. Can I change this somehow? I think it's going to automatically do a broadcast WAV file. And the benefit of that is, the difference between, in this instance, a broadcast WAV file and a typical, just normal WAV file is that the broadcast WAV file can contain the timestamps so that you could automatically place it directly in the position that we just showed a minute ago. So, but let me know, if you don't need it to be in broadcast wave. Let's see if we come over to our project setup. So this might be in a project setup that we could set record file type. So if we choose AIFF, let's see if I did a render in place. Okay, so we'll have Scratch Guitar 016.2, and let's look to see. Yeah, so it looks like it's going to render it as a broadcast WAV file, and that's, maybe if you could let me know if there's a particular reason you don't want a broadcast WAV file, but it's basically the same as a WAV file, but it will include additional metadata so that it can automatically have the timestamps in it. Okay, so and we see next question. Would it be possible to export multiple selected tracks without having to solo them? For example, bass and drums. All right, so if I wanted to export all of these particular tracks, I'm not sure if you wanted to, if you wanted to mix down these, but if we wanted to, at this point, if it's going to be like a multi-channel export. So when we come over here, we could click on multiple, and now I could say, okay, I want all of my bass and all of my drum tracks and my bass to be exported. So we could just choose that, or if I'm not sure if you wanted to just simply mix down those particular files, like a standard mix down. A quick way of doing that, if you wanted to, let's say if you just come here and we go to render in place, and we go to render settings, we could just choose to mix down to one audio file when multiple events are selected. So that way we wouldn't have to necessarily, have to solo each of the files. So whatever events are selected will be mixed down to one stereo file. Or if you wanted to export them individually, you could do the export audio mix down and just choose multiple. And you could do it like that. So there's a couple different ways. Let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we see Benny's computer is sick, so sorry to hear that. Hope you get it all figured out for you. All right, so we see from Alexander Plasko from Connecticut, in reference to Howling in 6 assigning chords to the 8 trigger pads, is there another way to drag a chord onto a trigger to assign that trigger other than dragging from the chord track? All right, so let's take a look. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you have any and if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you do hit the like button, and that enables us to continue to do these live streams. All right, so let's say I think we may have some chord pads utilized with Verve. Okay, so we have our okay, so let's say if I just come here and we clear the chord. Haven't worked with this in a while. Okay, so let's say we rename the pad. All right, so it looks like, if you want to just play the chord, I cleared the chord and then I did a snapshot chord. So let's say now I want this to be like an F sharp. So now when I click there, we could just, so you could just simply clear the chord, click on snapshot chord, play a chord, and assign it to the chord pads right there. So let me know if that helps. All right, so we see a question. I use a MacBook Pro and Machine as my MIDI controller, and anytime I play and record MIDI live, the notes are recorded earlier than I play them. Is there a way to fix this? So one thing to do is sometimes some plugins will, see if you actually come here to constrain delay compensation. You could do this on the Windows platform. Sometimes we get this with some older MIDI drivers, and just make sure you're on a MacBook Pro. But you could check. So I would try to do a constrained delay compensation right there. But often when we go to like there could be some adjustments that you can make and see if you get the same. If you get the same result, one thing that would be interesting is if you get the same result when you hit Alt or Option plus K. So let's say Option plus K, and if you play, kind of using your computer keyboard or clicking with the mouse, if you have the same delay, if you had the same offset, so that would be, and if you don't have an offset there, but you do with Machine, that would be thinking that it could be something with Machine. But if we go to your studio setup and go to the audio system, there is, check to make sure that you could adjust for record latency, and there's also kind of a record shift. But generally, you don't really have that on the Mac platform. It's more with kind of like Windows XP era of Windows drivers, or, so. But check to see if you have the same timing delays using the onboard keyboard. Again, that's Option plus K or Alt K for Windows users. And try to see if maybe there's a plugin that's, sometimes the plugins don't record their latency correctly or don't report it correctly, that could cause it. So maybe if you do a constrained delay compensation and see if that also fixes it. All right, so we see from Jay from Connecticut, just follow up to his Nuendo question. It says, but the Nuendo version 10 and below owners can upgrade today with an added 20% discount to Nuendo 11. Owners should be able to receive the 20% discount, not referring to specific free update. There are different promotions that go on throughout the year. So sometimes we wanted to make it, a lot of people that were Nuendo users, the immediate question is, oh, I want all the Cubase features right now. So, to make it easier for those people to upgrade, to be eligible for the free grace period update, since the Cubase grace period was extended, we wanted to offer something for Nuendo users. So there, when Nuendo 12 is released, there may be promotions going on when it's a product. So. All right, so we see Michael Pierce checking in from his control room. So glad you could join us, Michael. And he's based in London. He says Cubase has been brilliant today. Says we're doing a re-record project. Cubase detected tempo, got the tracks to a constant speed, then spectral layers isolated the Vox for us to build templates. Awesome. So it's great. Thanks for sharing your workflows. We're glad that you're having a great day with your Cubase. Okay, so we see question, is there a key command to zoom in and out of the MIDI controller lanes? So I don't think that there's a particular key command to do that. It could be, so when we want to do this, to zoom in and out, for zooming, so generally we kind of zoom the editor, but not necessarily this. But I think if we save them as presets, also, let's see if I come here, let's just create, all right, so let's say if I wanted to save, all right, so I will just come here. All right, so now so there's not a key command, but you could just simply, when you come to the editor, you could have each of the presets can have their own particular. So if you save a controller lane preset, those can be set to be, but there isn't necessarily a key command to raise or lower the the controller lane by default that I know of. But try saving a particular controller lane preset. All right, so just see a comment. Can't wait till we get more M1 native VST3 plugins. I want to run Cubase in full native mode. So, all right. Okay, so and we have Greg McCarty checking in from Portland, Oregon. I think Greg was on our very first live stream we did a number of years ago. All right, so Thomas is just saying, great inspiration. I'm doing my best to learn and loving it. Greetings from Norway. Thanks for being a part of the community today. Okay, so I see hello from Toronto. What is the Cubase equivalent to Logic Pro invert MIDI function that could invert / pivot MIDI notes around a certain given notes? So it might be a logical editor preset. I mean, so if we're in a MIDI editor here, so we could invert selections, but we could, so if it's a selection thing, we could come here, and I think that, you could choose to invert selections, but if, and just kind of reading it again, but it says that can invert / pivot notes around a certain given notes. So it's probably, I'm not familiar with, I'm not a Logic user, but it's probably going to be maybe a logical editor function where we could say, okay, I want to take type is equal to note, and then, we could choose to say, notes unequal to, let's say D3, and we'll say value 1, our pitch is unequal to D3, that we want to take our pitch and, set to relative random values between, or, we could say mirror, those particular notes. So you could do stuff, let's say from E3 through A3. So, you might be able to do stuff like this where you could just, select notes that are unequal to this in Mirror. But if you want to send me, if there's like a YouTube link on it, I'm sure we could probably create an equivalent inside of Cubase with the logical editor. All right. All right. So we have Hetty Lap checking in from the Netherlands. So thanks for joining us. All right. We have Tyler Mills also from Atlanta. So we see a question. I got Cubase Elements 11 3 months ago. I need to just upgrade to 12, or do I have to purchase? I lost Howling and Sonic after installing Retrolog 2. So if it was November 10th of last year or later, when you activated your Cubase Elements license, it'll automatically upgrade to Cubase Elements 12 for you. So that was the date for the grace period update. So there's no problem there. I just see lost Howling and Sonic 2 after installing Retrolog 2. So I'm not sure if Retrolog, so if that comes with Cubase Elements or not. So I'm not sure if that's in Elements or if that's in Artist and Pro only. So maybe it's just a licensing thing that maybe you installed the like a wrong Howling and Sonic version, but the installing Retrolog 2 shouldn't have an impact on Howling and Sonic. And we have Renee checking in from Quebec. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I just see Greg still using your VSS FLOR mouse during the live stream. It's so quiet we can't hear the click noise at all. No problems encountered since you got it. Is it the rechargeable model? Yeah, so the mouse that I have, let me see if I could. Yeah, it's that model, and I always do look for kind of a quiet mode because I have to do tutorials, and the last thing you want to hear is like you're just a mouse click constantly going. So on that, it does, one of the features that was there is a quiet mouse click. So, but there are Logitech mice that have quiet mouse clicks as well. So I have a Logitech one here. Let me see if I could find a model number. I don't have my lights fully on, but there are a number of Logitech mice that are marketed to have quiet mouse clicks. So I use those a lot. And the reason that I use this particular mouse, I often have I'm reading all of the text and I monitor the live stream on a Microsoft Surface Go. I have my personal i9 PC for my computer, and I use my MacBook Pro. And with this mouse and my keyboard, I could just switch between 3 different computers using the same keyboard and mouse, and it's rechargeable via micro USB. So that's the mouse that I use for it, and it's worked great. All right. So we see from Davey, is it possible, the question, when you double click on a MIDI container in a project window to open a container in the key editor with the view at the cursor position and not at the beginning of the container? All right. So I think we had this mailed in as well, but we'll go ahead. Just activate this project. Okay, so let's say when I'm in this mode here, like let's say, okay, I have a couple of MIDI parts. Okay, so let's say we go to my strings patch here. So wherever, so you see it's, so So when you double click on a MIDI container on the project window to open a container in the key editor with the view at the cursor position and not the beginning of the container. So, if my cursor position is outside, so when I double click here, and let's say my cursor position is here and I double click on this event, and I'll make it a little larger so everyone could see it. So, it doesn't move it to my cursor, isn't jumping to the beginning of the container. It's actually going directly to the event. But let's say if I have this event here, and I'll make it one really long event. So let's say I'll glue these together here, and we'll have this as one long event. So, and let's say I'm zoomed in here. So the beginning of this event starts at measure 2, but let's say that's kind of out of view. And now when I double click, let's say I'm in the sample editor and I double click on this particular event, it's where the cursor is visible and doesn't seem to be on the particular event. So if I wanted to double click on this event here, we can see that the cursor is outside of this particular event range, but the cursor isn't moving to the particular event as we start. And I'll try this also if we go and set this into our, if we have it going to a dedicated window as well. So I'll just switch the behavior. I believe it works the same way. So now when I double click here on this event, it doesn't go to the beginning. I can see my playhead position right there at measure 38. And if I wanted to go to this position, since we're out of the playhead position isn't in there, but let's say if I go to the very end and I double click, we could see exactly kind of where the cursor is automatically, the playhead position. So it seems like it's working where it's not jumping to the beginning of the particular event for me in either the lower zone. And one thing to check also, one thing that may throw this off, if you go to the transport, let's see if we do use video follows edit mode, that might change the behavior. So let's say if I double click here, so now the cursor, I think, let's see if we, so if my cursor is here, let's say my cursor is here, just at the end of the event, and I double click. So check in the transport and try to uncheck use video follows edit mode, and that may change it because when an event is selected, often the cursor may immediately jump to the start. So try deactivating or unchecking use video follows edit mode and see if that helps. Okay, so we see, will there ever be a clip view in Cubase like other programs? I absolutely love Cubase, but also love and need live looping. So I'm sure that, different people and teams are looking into different paradigms, but nothing has been announced yet. But they'll see this as of next week when I kind of submit my report with all my questions. So we'll never say never. Okay, so we see question, is there a full support for and internal integrated Dolby Atmos support and feature in Cubase 12? So it's been announced that it will be released with the next maintenance update. So it's not in 12, but probably in 12.01. So we'll look for that shortly. So it's not in currently, but it's coming. And if you're a Cubase 12 user, no additional charge. So. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, survived bad weather last night. We're glad you're safe, Michael. and glad you could join us today in the live stream. All right, and he says, whack the like button, keep Greg employed. So that's always good. So. All right, so we see question. Hi, everyone. Is it possible to export one song from a Cubase 5 to another Cubase 5 that has the same VST guitar rig 5, for instance, maintaining the same sounds and presets? Greetings from Rome. So, you could, it's very easy to come over here and you could choose to just make sure I'm reading this once. Okay, so if you wanted to, at this point, you could do a import tracks from project. So let's say if you're kind of doing like a full band project and you wanted to import like plugins and different settings from different tracks into a particular project, so you can have like consistency, like maybe you want the same drum sound. When you come here, you could say, I want to import, and we'll say tracks from project. And we'll say, okay, we're going to come over here. We could select a particular project. And instead of coming over here and choosing events and parts, we could say channel and inspector settings. So I could say, okay, I wanted to select my kick track, and instead of putting it to new track, I could say, oh, let's just take the settings from that one kick track and apply it to this same one. So I want to take what's in the guitar part and apply that. And what this will do is it's going to take the channel and inspector settings, not the events or not the automation, and import all of those directly into that particular track. So that came in like version 10. So if you're running Cubase 5, you may have to just kind of save the preset or manually copy it over. All right. All right, so we have Mark joining from Nairobi. Okay, so we have a question from Martin from Denmark. Is it possible to quantize multiple third-party VST MIDI tracks to a chord track at once? So I think, let's say if we, I'll jump to a different one here. So whether it's third party or not, it shouldn't matter. I'm going to add a chord track. So I know we can do it for the audio, but let's go ahead and see if we can do it for MIDI as well. So I'll activate this project first. That would help. So let's see if we select these parts here, and let's see if it's automatically read. So yeah, when we go to our chord track here, it just, whatever was selected, I just went to project and chose chord track, create chord events, and then it automatically just laid out the chord chart, the chords for me directly there. So so it doesn't really matter if it's going to be third party. It's just MIDI data wherever it's being sent out to. It's not really an issue. So let me know if that helps, Martin. Okay, we have a question from Thomas. I want to make an intro that contains various sound clips. Do I just use the import audio function? Yeah, you could do that, or you can drag from MediaBay over as well. So sometimes, if I wanted to come here, let's say I was doing a quick collage of stuff. So I'll just say, let's do a new project. All right, and let's say I'll come over here to kaleidoscope, and I want it in atmosphere, and I want it. So we could just kind of drag and drop. So we could do Steve Miller songs now. And let's say, so now we could just come here, and I've just made the worst sound design montage of all time. So now we could just play. And let's say as we do this, I'll just have a. Have this sound come in. So you could import audio files or just drag and drop from MediaBay as well. So. So we just see, hi Greg, asked you last week, are there any complaints regarding crashing Cubase 12? It happens mainly when I'm working with a plugin. Hope you can help. Thank you, Greg. So, some plugins, like with every version of Cubase, some of the requirements for VST3 plugins can become well known for plugins that don't necessarily follow them. Or if you're using VST2 plugins, that sometimes, development can be a little bit out of bounds, if you will. But if there's a particular plugin that you're working with that you think is causing problems, let me know. I'd be happy to kind of do some more research on it. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. What are all the causes of double notes? Whenever I record, there's always double notes, and I have to remove them afterwards. Thank you. So generally, 99% of the times, it's a controller that's actually transmitting two MIDI notes. So it's often, let's say if you have like a Chord controller or Roland controller, Yamaha, and you have like a piano and attaches a piano that's layered with strings. That's often the piano's on one MIDI channel, the strings are on a different MIDI channel. So every time you press one particular key, you'll notice that it's going to transmit two different MIDI notes on different channels. So if we come here, let's say, okay, we'll add a quick instrument track, and we could go to the MIDI monitors. So we'll go to MIDI inserts, and we'll just come right over here to the MIDI monitor, and we'll see that if you hit one particular note and let go, if you see like two note messages but on different channels, that would indicate that you could just switch your controller keyboard to a patch that only transmits one particular sound. If you wanted to filter out all unnecessary or doubled channels, we could come over here to the input transformer, which in version 12 is here. We could put this at the track level or project level. In previous versions, it was a little icon that was directly here underneath the edit channel settings. But once we do that, we could open the panel, and there's presets, and we could say, let's go channel filtering. So you can say past channel 1 only. And what that'll do is it'll basically filter out anything that's not on a particular MIDI channel. but ideally it's going to be your MIDI controller that's probably transmitting two different MIDI note messages. And as we, do this, you could go into the MIDI key editor or into the list editor and choose to delete all notes that are MIDI channel 2. But, Cubase is capturing what your MIDI controller is transmitting. So if it's transmitting double notes, then Cubase will capture that. All right, so we see in Cubase 12, is there a Retrolog and Pad Shop standalone, as with Groove Agent and Halion Sonic SE? So I'm not sure if they work as standalones, and I think if you wanted it to maybe work as standalones, and I know it's even reading your question, I realize that it's a bit inconsistent. But with Halion Sonic SE and Groove Agent SE, there's many companies that provide content for those instruments. Like if you bought an instrument sound set for Halion, many times Halion Sonic SE is deemed as the free player for to realize that instrument, so that instrument could sound, and the same with Groove Agent. So that's why there's probably not standalone Pad Shop and Retrolog versions, even though they are sold separately and I'm sure if you bought it as part of the Absolute collection, that I think that they're not intended to run as standalone, but to run as plugins only. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to phase align drum mics in terms of updates to Cubase Pro 12? So yeah, there's, so now there's going to be warping, phase coherent audio warping. So let's come over here. So let's say I have all of my drums in a folder track. So we could put group editing on and then also just do phase coherent warping. So now when we zoom in and I'm in my free warp tool, so I could kind of drop in warp markers. Here, let me just kind of zoom in a little more. So with version 12, we could do all of our warping kind of directly on the project level. So now we could just kind of warp like that and maintain the phase or not. So give that a shot. So we just see question. Hi, Greg. Thanks for the live stream. One, is it possible to make a stereo Q mix? So certainly. So if we wanted to come directly to our Q mix, we can come over here to the audio connections and we want to go to our control room. So all we have to do now, I think we still have a Q mix. So let's say I wanted to make a Q mix for drums. I'll just label it drums. And at this point, we could choose our configuration. So we'll say stereo. And now each of our Q mixes that we see with the special little star will be done in stereo. So you could configure those to various outputs on your audio interface. But yeah, Q mixes can definitely be in mono or stereo. All right, so we see Lawrence just saying, thank you for answering my questions, Greg. Greetings from Germany. You're welcome. Hopefully the answers are helpful. All right. Okay, so we see how to make a compilation in audio recording track. I guess this would be like a comp recording. So as an audio is going to be recorded, it'll just kind of be placed like each pass. If you're doing like cycle recording, can automatically be placed into what's called lanes. So if we wanted to open up lanes, I'll just come to this particular file here. So let's say we'll see this show lanes. So this would be like take 1, take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have kind of the master take here. And what I could do is we have a dedicated tool with a hand called a comp tool. And I can just come and select the comp directly here, and I could listen to each of the individual parts when I hold down Control or Command, and we could just choose different parts. And as we make a decision here, that this choice is automatically shown right up there. So we could adjust kind of the positioning of the comps and do all sorts of wonderful, easy comping just that simply. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to export to a MP3 file? So yeah, when we are in your export audio mixdown, all you have to do is say file type, and you'll just choose MPEG-1 layer 3. And at that point, it would just export it as an MP3 file as opposed to a WAV or FLAC or AIF. Okay, sorry, just my chat field jumped on me. Let me see if I can find back. Okay, so I just see a question. I think I changed a setting by mistake now. When I'm playing something on Cubase and try to open Chrome, for example, the music stops as soon as I open another window. So I would go to the studio menu, to studio setup, select the audio system, and check release ASIO driver in background when application is in background. So give that a shot. I see Mark also mentioned that. P-Zone 36 just saying I learned something new every time I visit. Thanks. Glad that everyone can learn some new tips and tricks. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. All right, we see Nick. We're seeing Nick has COVID. It's not feeling well. We hope you recover fully and quickly, Nick. So you'll be in our thoughts. All right, so we see, does Wavelet transform work with psychoacoustic frequency scale like Mel? I don't think so, but let's go ahead and take a quick look at the Wavelet. This is in Wavelab. All right, so as soon as I... so now we come over here. So I'm not sure if it is, you know, if it's working with the psychoacoustic frequency scale, but it just kind of gives you kind of, you know, your frequency domain as you look at it. All right, and we see Randy Lee's on the live stream as well. He's getting some ice cream from Michael Teams. All right, we have Daniel checking in also from Munich. Okay, so we just see a question. What's the difference between range selection automation and trim automation? So probably, let's say if we open up kind of an automation lane here. So if we see, let's say if we have a range selected automation, I think this might be referring to where we could just adjust, like, you know, just one particular phrase and say, okay, I want this down. So maybe it's a word, and we say, okay, I just need to bring this word up or down. So we could use kind of automation like that. Where if we have trim automation, so let's say if I come here and we'll switch this to, we'll switch our automation mode to trim, that as I automate a particular event here, so let me just put this in the loop, that as we automate the fader, that we can kind of attenuate, kind of bring the automation down or up. So as we do this, let's say now I do trim automation. So let's say now I just come here. And I'll put it on the correct track this time. That would help. All right, so now I will come over here and let's play. So we could see kind of as we would automate the trim, that you could just kind of bring down kind of that automation level. So we could see, here's my automation lines going on, and then we could kind of attenuate the automation once we're in trim mode. So kind of different functions with that. All right, so I just see Mo just saying this is a link to a video about MIDI note inversion. So I'm not sure if you could post links in the chat, but if you want to email it to me, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we have a question from Miguel. Are there any more functions to be added to the new MIDI remote before discontinuing the previous one? A lot of functions are not available using the new MIDI remote setup. So obviously it's the MIDI remote in version 12 was kind of the first iteration. It's a massive project as we do that. And, I think that this is just kind of the first step of this. And we realize that there's stuff that's done in a generic remote or in other, MIDI remote quick controls functions, I think are all there, but there's some functions. And that's why the generic remote is still there. So I think we'll see more of those functions migrating over. So we didn't take away the generic remote for that particular reason, but I think we'll see more things being added in time so that it'll be a much easier customer and user experience using the new MIDI remote as opposed to the generic remote. And I think that as everything is migrated over, that at that point we might see generic remote eventually be discontinued and be kind of a legacy mode of working. So, but nothing's been announced other than more stuff will be added over time. All right, so we see Renee just saying, thanks for your input about the mouse. It's really cheap on Amazon right now. Time for a new mouse for me. So yeah, I think I paid $29 or $25 for it, and it's been really good. So hope you enjoy it. So just see from Ed Pacheco saying, hi Greg, I like your live feeds, really helpful. Thank you. So thank you for the kind words. All right, so we just see from MaxPed, and this might have been directed to Michael, just says, thanks for reply. I've tried exporting an OMF 1 or 2 type, but no inserts or anything else appear. Everything is clean, no reverbs, no distortion. Thank you. So if you're doing, OMF or AF, they're not going to carry over any of the plugin settings. It's just going to be kind of the audio, the media, and AFs will maybe carry over some simple fades, but there's no translation for bringing over all the plugins. All right, and we have Tim Weinheimer checking in from Mission Viejo, California. Thanks for joining us, Tim. Hope you're well. Okay, so we see a question. How could I emulate Apple's main stage in a Cubase project? Having a huge setup of different VST instruments ordered in a list, and also CPU RAM saving tips for that. So what I see a lot of people doing for live performance, and I think this is kind of what Hans Zimmer, how they're using their Cubase, is they may just set everything up. We'll do like a new project. So let's just add a couple of instrument tracks. Okay, so let's say, okay, we're going to have all right, we'll add one more here. All right, so what a lot of people will do is just kind of come directly here, and they'll take each song, they'll build up their different layers just right here. So we'll say, okay, and I want to take this, and we'll place it into a new folder. So you can say, okay, this is my song 1, okay? And let's say if we duplicate this folder, I'll just come right over here. So I'm going to duplicate that folder, and let's say we'll do slightly different presets. All right, so now I would come here, and we have like song 1, and as we would just kind of play, and then, okay, let's go to song 2. And if you're using VST3 instruments, it's really, all you could have this automatically select it, and then say, okay, now we need to go to song 1. And as long as it's not passing audio, it's not taking up, CPU or RAM if it's a VST3 instrument, and they'll just kind of have all of their songs just kind of laid out like this, and you could just activate the particular track, and that would automatically, you could have it automatically record on selected tracks as you go and say, oh, okay, now we need to go back to song 1. So that's how you could just kind of do it with folder tracks. That's how a lot of people do live performance for playing back different synths. Okay, so we see, does the multi... okay, so we see question, does the multi option on FFT size parameter and supervision actually use shorter windows for higher frequencies? So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so so let's say the FFT. So let's see for. So let me just create a couple different ones, make sure we're seeing. And I'll just do one more just so we can have 3 different spectrum. Okay, so just read it. So the multi-option on the FFT size parameter and supervision actually use shorter windows for higher frequencies. I don't think so. We come here. All right, so say if we come here. So I don't think it, I'm inclined to say that it doesn't use shorter windows for the higher frequencies, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding your question. All right, we see Best Korean Jesus from San Diego here, so thanks for joining us. So you see, is MFCCs and other spectral features like spectral centroid used for machine learning useful for mixing and mastering? So I haven't heard anyone ever kind of talk about those in context of mixing and mastering. So it may not carry over. All right, so you see question, why is the ASIO guard completely maxed out and crashing in 12? I barely have anything running on inserts. I'm at the highest buffer settings. The same projects in 11 run better. Any fixes? So obviously there hasn't been a maintenance update with that. But if you could tell us, Angelina, if you're running on Mac or PC, if you're running on M1 processor, if you're running M1 native, if you're running Rosetta, if you're on Mac, what plugins are your plugins, are your plugins, M1 native if you're doing that. So that information would be helpful. And, some plugins, like, if you put, like a lot of times one track, if you put, 10 plugins on one track, that could max out your CPU because that one track could only be utilizing one core. So if you could let us know if you have like multiple plugins across multiple tracks, that information would be helpful. Let's see. See, Best Crane Jesus just saying, I'm here to learn something I didn't know I needed to know. So I just see, I have a question. Does Cubase Pro 12 use more memory to load VST plugins than Cubase Pro 11? Please let me know. So I don't think that there's any real differences in the memory usage between the two programs. So I have, when I've been running it on my two computers, my work computer as well as my studio computer, I haven't noticed any that it's using more memory on my systems. The same program is going to be very, the same program, it will have similar performance patterns between the two computers, between the two versions on two different computers. All right, so we see Best Green Jesus just saying, I uninstalled all my VST2 and crashing has stopped since. So it's kind of, there's a lot of VST2 plugins that can go a little rogue for capabilities and functionality. So. Just see someone saying they've run Cubase since version 5 and they feel old. So I've been running it since version 2 on Atari. So I feel old. All right, so Jazz Dude just saying, if you like this informative Cubase hangout, subscribe and don't forget to hit the like button. Okay, so we just see a question. Why does my equalizer display the pre-HC and LC in red when active? I see others. Theirs is green. What does that indicate? How do I change it? So let's take a look. Okay, so let me just jump to our project here quickly. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. All right, so let's see. We come here to the pre section. So to me, it's red when it's So let's say if we come here, and we'll just jump to our kick track. So let's say, and so we could just kind of do our gain here. So that would just allow us to kind of, so, you know, we could have it to the point where we could just say, okay, I wanted to have my filters here. And these would just be for the low cut and high cut, it looks like. But when we have like the gain, that's not going to be affected. So that's just for the pre-filter. So that's just bypassing the high cut and low cut, but not the gain. So, but it seems like it's red. All right, so say we go here. So we click in, and now we turn this on. So you have to kind of, it's like more two-stage process. So you come here, you can turn that on and off, but it looks like you could choose to bypass both of them together. Or individually. So that would bypass all of them. And then you could just turn it on and off for each. So you have an individual high cut, low cut bypass as well as global. So all right. Okay, so it's a question about the cursor position jumping. It says, I found out when you had the key editor window already opened and you double click on a new container, it's when it goes to the beginning instead of the cursor. Okay, so let me just jump to a project where I could create that quickly. Okay, so let's say if we're here and I have the key editor open on this particular track. So let's say, okay, so when you double click on a new container, then it goes to the beginning instead of to the cursor. So let's say my cursor is here and I double click on my new container, it looks like it's right in the center. So if I move my cursor here and double click on a container while the window is open, that we will just come directly there. Let's say if we go to kind of a large, I'll just make this window a little smaller and we'll kind of tuck it away so we could look at it as well. So we come here, say my cursor is here. All right, and now I'm going to double click and still looks like it's following the cursor position wherever it is. So let me know if I'm still doing something differently, but it seems to automatically, if I'm here and then I double click here to an already open one, that it's working. But let's see again, if I go to use video files edit mode. So if I have this key editor open, my cursor is here, I double click, then it goes to the beginning. So again, just make sure, try to deactivate use video files edit mode, because then I kind of see that behavior you're describing. So just see a question, when setting up the toolbar, I have a hard time finding what I checked. Is there a way for the console to highlight or flash what I selected to guide my eyes? Okay, so when you say toolbar, I'm thinking of these tools up here, but let me see. Okay, so when setting up the toolbar, I have a hard time finding what I checked. Is there a way for the console to highlight or flash? So I'm not sure if you're doing, so when you say toolbar, I'm kind of thinking of this. But let's say if we're here, if as we click, we could see kind of the active channel here. But there isn't a way I know of to kind of make that channel kind of blink automatically. But, you could kind of see, if you look at kind of the name field of what channel is selected, but I think I'm misunderstanding your question, or maybe I missed part of it, or what the toolbar is and how that is kind of tied into the mixer. Okay, so we just see a question. How can I change the volume in a track as it goes? So really all you have to do is automate it. So let's say if we're here and we're playing our project, and I wanted to take my guitar, all I'd have to do is, let's say I select a guitar, we could just go to the fader. So let's say I'll just put this in center, and then we click on W, and this will write automation. And now everything that I've just recorded while it's playing will play back. So we'll just come right over here. Let's solo that guitar. So everything that we just did. And if we look at the fader for that particular channel, so click on W, and that will write the automation, and then you want the automation to be read back, so that's what the R is. So that's how you can adjust it. All right, so we see question, hello, when is Dolby almost coming? I guess Dolby Atmos maybe. So that'll be coming in the next maintenance release. So look for it probably maybe within a month-ish or so is usually when it comes out. All right, so we see, is there a possibility to use a MIDI trigger on more than one module in a new FX modulator? When I activate the MIDI trigger on the second module, it automatically switches off on the first module. All right, so let's take a look. Doesn't like that project. All right, bear with me just a second here. All right, let me just find a particular project I was. Okay, let's open up this project quickly. It's a big project here. I think we're almost toward the end. All right. Okay, so let's say I want to have my FX modulator, so I'll come over here. Let me just drop in volume here. Okay, so I'll now have this assigned from trigger. So I want to add, let's say, a MIDI track, and I want to assign the MIDI track so now when I hit a MIDI note, all right, so say I come here, so now my FX modulator will turn on when a MIDI note is hit. All right, so let's see if we could set up a different one. Let's do maybe a similar one for panning. Okay, and let's activate this MIDI mode, and let's say I'm going to add a separate MIDI track. Okay, and let me see. All right, so let's see if we could set it to a different. So it looks like I see one kind of MIDI input for that. For both modules. Let me just... So it looks like you could have MIDI in one of the modules at a time, but maybe not both. Let me just see if we switch. So it kind of looks like it's for one of the 6 modules. So, but I'll mention that and pass along, see if it's something that could be added. So we see, hi Greg, is there any way to get the tempo track list that sits in the left zone in a floating window, a text list of the changes? I'm sure there's a way to open this like before the marker window can. So let's say if we have a number of tempo changes, I think if we go back to here, let's say if we wanted to see our tempo changes here. So let's say we have a number of tempo changes starting here. So I think if we go to Control T, that will open up kind of the tempo editor here. So if that's what you wanted to see, so just Control or Command plus T. And if you want to see it as kind of, this is a graphic editor. If you wanted to see this in kind of a different floating window, I think if we go to the project, to the browser, and then we go to our tempo track, we could see all of the tempo track information set up directly here as well. So you could say, when I come here to the tempo track, at that point, we could see the tempo track in a list. So you could do that again and just go to the project browser, and then you could see all your different tempo changes listed directly there. So let me know if that's what you were thinking of. All right, so we have we have another question from Amateur Norway. Is it possible to change the tempo in a song? So yeah, depending on your version. So if you have, I think, Artist or Pro, you could come over here and you have a tempo track. So if we wanted to go back to say this particular song that we're playing, so let's say. So we could come right over here and say, okay, our tempo that we have is 100 beats a minute. And let's say at this point, I want it to be so we could just kind of speed it up directly there. We could also choose to kind of ramp up tempo changes. So as I come and say, okay, let's just slowly ramp up. And if you wanted to also just, again, hit Control, if you have like Cubase Elements or below, you could go, I think if you hit Control or Command plus the letter T for tempo, that you could have the dedicated tempo track window there. So yeah, you could definitely have it. And then once you have the tempo track, you just wanted to tell it to follow the tempo track, and you can do it in the transport by going right here, or on the tempo track by clicking there. All right, so we have a question. Can you show audio quantizing? So certainly. So let's say if I just wanted to take, here, I'll just, you know, if I wanted to take like the guitar parts here, you know, we could just come over here and let's say we'll have our quantize option here. So we'll go to, let's say, our quantize settings. So at this point, or we just open up our quantize panel from the edit menu. So we'll go to the quantize panel, and now what you want to do is just activate kind of audio warp and say, okay, I want to quantize this as eighth notes. And now we could just quantize, and you can see kind of all the eighth notes just kind of shift. We'll undo that. But do you want to just make sure that you have the audio warp quantize? So without that on. So on the lead guitar part, so you could just kind of come right over there. So you want to make sure that you have the audio warp quantize on, and then you just hit Q, and then you're kind of all set. Okay, so you just see when I export a single MIDI track with melody and chords, import into Sibelius, automatically one staff is created. It's not showing a grand staff. Can you help me? So when you're, you know, when you're exporting a MIDI file, there's no real, you know, it's going to be just like the MIDI notes, the MIDI messages, the time, and but it's a MIDI file itself doesn't include whether it's going to be in a grand staff or not. So you would have to set that into Sibelius to automatically, you know, and sometimes I know like Dorco is smart enough to say, okay, when we do piano, you can have it go into a grand staff. So there might be something similar in Sibelius, but you know, a standard MIDI file is not going to carry over that this voice should be played into a grand staff. So it's just not part of the standard MIDI file. So you'd have to set that up in Sibelius. So it's not going to automatically do it from a MIDI file from anywhere. Okay, so we have a question from Orrin Bynum. Will you put an audio, the question is, will you put an audio recording into the chord track and show how to analyze it and play it in a Hallian soundtrack and show it in the score editor to print out, please? Okay, so let's just come right here to this. I think we may have a chord track. Let me just... just find the chord track here quickly. So, okay, so I have it in this folder. All right, so I'm just going to move the chord track here. Okay, so I want to basically just take the rhythm guitar. So let's say I just want to take this example here, this project we're just listening to. And I'm going to drag that to the chord track, and auto-magically it's now come up with our chords directly there. So as we start working with this, so we can see our chords, and let's go ahead and just print. If we wanted to create a blank MIDI part, so at this point, I'll just say, let's add a instrument, and we could have this play, Halion Sonic SE, whatever you wanted it to be. And I will create a blank part. So we have an empty event. I will select that event, go to the scores editor. We'll open the score editor. And at this point in the score editor, I'll go to the scores menu to advanced layout and show chord track. And then that will just generate the chord track for us in notation. All right, so we just see question. Quick question about the solo function in Cubase. Why are some tracks that contain mute automation effectively in solo defeat by default? Can't see a use case where that would be desired. So I think, like, if you have tracks that are, let's say we have a number of tracks here that where one is soloed, and I think if you hold down. Let me just do it in a smaller project here real quick, just so we can show this a little easier. So I think it mimics the behavior of some large format consoles. So let's say, if we have different tracks, maybe that are soloed here, and let's say as we're playing along, so let's say, okay, I'm here and I just have, let's say different tracks are muted. All right, so, but let's say if we had other tracks that were soloed and now I wanted to solo the guitar, or let's say now we have this, I just wanted to now solo the bass. What you could do, I think, is you hold down, it's just hold down Control and then click on solo. So at that point, if you had other stuff, we could now, that was soloed, you can just come and then say, okay, I wanted to mute everything, including what is currently soloed. Just hold down Control and then click on the solo, then that will override all the solo states that currently exist. So, but I think the workflow is similar to large format consoles, just for old school audio engineers. All right, so Michael Pierce, we see he's done for his day, so that's great. All right, and we have Mitch Michelle checking in from Michigan. Thanks for joining. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil, and Michael Teens wants people to smash the like button. All right, so we see Mitch Michelle used to write, he's been running Cubase since Atari days, and he used to write for Amiga World magazine. Wow, those are good old days of computing. So we have a question. Hi, how are you? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Does any version of Cubase come with built-in amp and cabinet simulators? So certainly. So if you wanted to just come over here, I think in this track we have, so if you wanted to come here, we could go under distortion. So you'll see like the VST amp rack as a plugin. So you'll have different amplifiers or physically modeled, as well as different cabinets. And you'll also will have the VST bass amp as well. So we could just come over here. So let's say if we go to not the amp rack again, but to the bass amp this time. So if you want like classic Ampeg goodness, or ones that mysteriously look like other, and with different cabinet configurations and, different effects pedals that you could include, different microphone positions, configuration. You could also have pre-effects, master effects. So all these things can be just and are included with Cubase. So we were the first company that actually did software guitar amps way back, probably 1995, with the guitar amp called Red Velvet. So. Okay, so we just see a question from Taylor Sapp from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. Why do I not get any sound when importing tracks from another project? Let's see, Cubase 1102, Windows 10, importing only channel and inspector settings. So I would check to make sure that the channel and inspector settings are aligned to your current hardware. So it could be that maybe you're importing a particular track and it's outputted to output 3 and 4. And if you're doing the mixer, the channel settings, the routings from the other project will be carried over. And if you switched audio interfaces, maybe it's being routed to an output that's not currently present. So I would, as you look at the particular files, I would come over here and just kind of check the output routing and make sure that's going to a source that's actually defined in your VST connections under outputs, that these aren't being sent to a bus that doesn't exist in your audio connections page. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to get an accurate drum map from drums in Hallian Sonic SE? So I think in Groove Agent, is set up to automatically create the drum maps with Hallian Sonic SE. I think there's a number of them that will automatically follow the general MIDI conventions, so that the general MIDI maps work, but the other ones may have to be manually created. So, and if you run into a situation like that, the one thing I would do is, like, if you're only using, let's say, 5 or 6 drum sounds, is maybe, just figure out what sounds that you want to use. So we'll go ahead and take a look at it here. I'll load up a Hallian Sonic SE and let's jump to maybe a drum patch. All right, so let's say we go to modern 80s kit here. Okay, so once we have this defined as so I'll just come here. I'll just say, okay, let's do, so let's say, okay, let's see Hallian Sonic SE here. So let's see if this will work. So let's say now that we do this, so it looks like the Hallian Sonic SE just kind of carried over. So let me just try a different drum kit. Okay. So now we have this. So some of this sounds, so, if you are to this point where, okay, you may not be using 100 sounds, but if you just come and let's say click just to the left, you could say, okay, this is, and then you could just, come right over here and make kind of the actual, drum map directly from there. But you could just kind of go through and audition. But you could start off maybe with a general MIDI map. So let's say, okay, I want to come here. Let's do a general MIDI map. So now when I click to the left, we could, and I'll just take this into kind of full screen. And this may have switched it all to MIDI channel 10. That now, like as we come over here, we could just say, okay, this is my kick. So as we would just select just to the left, you could now just come over here and type the name in and save it as a drum map. But I didn't think that most of them, but it seems like some of them will now automatically carry over for the drum maps. Okay, so we see Michael Team's got broccoli and cheese soup today. So, inspire Michael Pierce's soup, virtual soup gifting. All right, so we see from Luis Che, hello, Greg. I saved a template and now I cannot find it. Where do they get saved? Are templates part of the individual project or global? So when you go to access templates, you could come right over here. Let's say you go to new project, and in the hub, they will show up under more. And these will be where all of your templates that you saved will be accessed directly from there. So it's independent of the project. And I think if you go into your project, like into presets, you'll see a templates folder. But to access it, go to your new project, and from within the hub, just come right over here and click on more. And then all the templates that you created will be accessed directly from there. Okay, so we see from Nick Saya, hi, how do I stop, question, hi, how do I stop the arrangement window from scrolling under the playhead? I hit some command I can't find. All right, so this is a great feature for some people. Some people hate it, some people love it. But so when we're playing, let's say we're playing our project here, if we go to our scroll, so we could come here and then you may have activated stationary cursor. So now the window is constantly kind of scrolling in the background. Or if we want it to be just page scroll, this will be like when it gets to the end, it'll just automatically kind of scroll. Or you could just, so you may have just switched it to stationary cursor. And the reason why some early programs kind of did this, just kind of an interesting aside, is when, it used to be really hard in the early days of having a 386 computer, of having 8 tracks, and when you got to the end for it to redraw the waveforms in a way that was wasn't comical. So a lot of programs that had problems redrawing the waveforms, this was their way of kind of constantly scrolling, so that you didn't have to have an annoying 5-second waveform redraw. So, and some people just kind of grew up with that. So, but I think you just need to switch it to page scroll from stationary cursor. Okay, so we see from Best Korean Jesus, is there an option to have the comp tool quantize? I've been making cuts before I select. Okay, so let's take a look. It may just be tied to your snap value. Okay, so let's say if I turn snap off by hitting the letter J. So now, like when I do comping, it's going to be freely based anywhere that I want. If we have our snap turned on to, let's say, in our grid set to beat, it will now kind of automatically snap directly to the beat as we select a comp right there. So, or if you want it to be quantize values, so say, okay, I want this to be a 16th note, I could just kind of just dial in and have it automatically go down to 16th notes. So just make sure that you have snap turned on, and then while you use the comp tool, it'll automatically kind of snap and follow your grid conventions. All right, so we see from Paul Claridge, Greg, how can I get my purchased products like Groove Agent 5 and Extra Sounds license off the dongle so I could take it out and use the USB port for something else? So, you know, you do have the ability with those plugins to run them on the like Groove Agent 5 and other license sets to run them on soft E license. But if you transferred it to your USB E license, at that point, it's kind of permanently on there. If you need the USB port for something else, you could always just, you know, get a $5 USB hub. I used them, you know, successfully for years and get the one with a cable attached. And so that way you could connect multiple things if you need the port. But they will be migrating over. I don't know when. You know, when the instruments will be migrating over, but everything is kind of in the process of migrating over to the new licensing system, but it's not all there yet. And some people, you know, I see a lot of people online just indicate, oh, you know, everything should be done. And then, you know, we would wait another 2 or 3 years until that happens. So it's going to be a gradual process. So. Okay, so we have kind of a follow-up to the about the toolbar. I guess this is in the mixers. Let me just jump back to a different project. We have more channels. So I mean the main one, like when you click on the gear in the top right screen and check something, whatever it enables, it disables, appears amongst the clutter and is hard to find. So yeah, if you're in, you know, the MixConsole here, so, and I will just come right over here. So, you know, as we do this, you know, you could kind of after a while figure out, you know, what, like maybe I don't need to see the markers, maybe I don't need to see the transport on this if I have a MIDI remote control. So you can see where, you know, there's a lot of icons that could appear. And that's kind of why they often give you kind of a default state to work with. But I can see where there's a lot of icons and it could be hard to realize what each of the icons can do. Okay, so we have a question. If I have a heavy project, how can I see what is the most processing consuming plugins VSTI active in my project? Thank you. So probably the easiest way, you know, because plugins are going to be dynamically changing as well. So we could determine the latency of plugins into MixConsole, like as Mark Rabin just mentioned. But there isn't a way, because sometimes, like this part of the song, an instrument may play one note and then it may play 12 notes later. So at one point, there's not a performance meter for every single plugin on every single track. So you may want to try as you're playing, you could try to open up your performance monitor and quickly just disable tracks, right click and enable tracks and see how that, to isolate it to a track. And then once you have it isolated to a track, do that for the individual plugins. But there isn't, because the performance meter would constantly be fluctuating all the time as the song is playing. So like you could look at it, but since it's constantly changing and evolving, it may not be any good really. It may not help you actually. All right, Michael Pierce has his soup, Masoor dal tadka, red lentils plus water, simmer for 20, fry onion, garlic, ginger, chilies, and add curry powder, mustard seed, cumin, and diced tomatoes. Add to lentils, add cilantro. Okay, so we have a question from Mark Rabin. It says, okay, so I have a question about the new dither. Does it make our output on left and right mains 24-bit max? So I believe that, let's just take a look at it and make sure. So, if you're doing 32-bit, often like a 32-bit floating point, often you're not needing to do dithering because it's not going down below that. So that's often why you need dithering, is when you're going from a 32-bit floating point to like a 24-bit fixed point for the exported file resolution. So, but let's come over here. So I think it will be, so it's, it's often taking 32-bit down to 24-bit, etc. So I think it is a 24-bit max for the dithering. So. Okay, so we see Michael Pierce says, so when you select an audio event, I think the inspector, this is from Michael Pierce's question, when you select the audio event, I think the inspector beneath the toolbar is meant to show a ton of info, but mine has vanished. Any ideas how to get it back? Okay, so let's say if we come here to, let's say I select an audio event and we see all of the different areas here. So if we don't see like your overview or the info line, if that's what you're talking about, Michael, if we just click right here into setup window, so you can see, okay, I want my status line info. You can now just, again, you'll see it kind of like the 3 zones that you could activate here. So make sure that you have the status line there. And then as you select a particular event, you can see a tremendous amount of info from the info and status lines. See, Constantine is just saying, who remembers when Cubase was only a MIDI multi-track recorder, no audio recording available on a basic Atari 1040 ST computer? It's come a long way, hasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing progress to see what engineers at Steinberg have done. So we see, hey Greg, is there a shortcut for the audio mixed down tab? So, if you go to file to export audio mix down, so I think you could create a keyboard shortcut to get there. Let's just take a look. So we go to export. Let me just take a look. Yeah, so if you go under the file menu, you can just set a key command to under export audio mixdown. Okay, so we have a question. Is there any way to have a key command for switching the preferences of the cursor bar, as in stopping at current location or stopping at last position? So yeah, all you have to do is we could set up, and usually what I do is set up under key commands, and you go to preferences. And then you'll find a transport section, and you'll say return to start position on stop. So I usually set this to like shift plus spacebar, and I'm going to assign that. So now when I hit that key command, we could say return to start position on stop, activate it. So when I play and I stop, but let's say I wanted to stop right at that position, I could just hit shift plus spacebar again. So if I wanted to stop right there and then move on, and then if I hit shift plus spacebar again, it'll go right to where I started before. So you could have a keyboard shortcut just to activate that particular preference. And again, you'll just go to key commands, and then you just say, and under preferences, transport return to start position on stop. So you have to make the key command. And another thing, if you have a numeric keypad, so let's say I hit enter for instead of the space bar, but then this is going back to even Atari days. And then if I hit the 0 keys, we could, let me just switch to behavior there. So when we're in the mode, we could also just kind of leave it in this mode. So when I hit stop now, when I hit the 0 key in the numeric keypad, it stops it in position. When I hit it again, it goes back. So now I hit enter for play, hit stop, hit 0 once, it stops, hit 0 a second time, it goes back to the start position. So, instead of the space bar, you could use the numeric keypads as well. And those will have different behavior. I realize it should be consistent, but Okay, so just see clarification. Sorry if I misunderstood the mute question. So let's say if we have mute automation and soloing the track. So let me just come over here. Okay, so I'll just automate some mutes on this. Okay, so we're just muting our bass. Okay, so let's say. Okay, so let's say I solo another track. So that still stays muted. So so it says so when any track session has mute automation, that track always solos along with the tracks that are intentionally being soloed. So when I go to, let's say, a solo this overhead track, currently we're in mute automation. I solo this overhead track. It's not affecting the mute status and the mute automation there. So let's say if we're not in mute automation, I solo. So it doesn't seem, make sure that like if you have any groups, check your, if you have a link. So let's say if I, make sure that if you have a link in a particular channel, so let's say if we create a link that you don't have, just check to see if you have, let's see, if mute solo listen is linked on a particular channels. So maybe there's a link with the different parameters, but it doesn't seem to, soloing doesn't seem to have any muted tracks that are muted via automation, don't seem to have any, don't seem to solo with a solo track. So sorry for misunderstanding. All right, Benny wants us to keep our fingers crossed. He's getting his computer up and running, so good luck. All right, so we just see from a question, is it normal for bypassing inserts to be set to on in the automation lane? It's always backwards for me, same results. I start recording with it on or off. All right, so let's say we'll jump back to our bass part. All right, so just kind of bypassing the plugin here. All right, so let's see. Is it normal for bypassing the inserts to be set to on in the automation lane? It's always backwards for me. Same results if I start recording with it on or off. So I think it's, it's not on until it's automated. And, so when we turn on the bypass, so you're turning on the bypass instead of just turning it off. So maybe just conceptually, I can see where it could be confusing, but if you think about it logically, I think you're turning on the bypass, and while the bypass is turning off the effect, it may seem backwards, but you're engaging the bypass. So that may be, so let me know if that makes sense or if I'm misunderstanding. Okay, so let's say we have a question. Hey, Greg, I have a 2200 track template. Sometimes I forget to disable one. I could see it in the VST window on the side, but the only way I can find it is to open tracks to find the enabled one. Can I find it from the VST window, or should this be a logical editor? All right, so let's say we want to find tracks that are select tracks that are bypassed, let's say. Okay, so I'll come here, or disabled rather. Okay, so let's say I have a disabled track here. So I think we could do this with the project logical editor. Let's give it a shot. So I will come over here and let's say we want to select let's say our container type is tracks, and we'll say their property is set to event is disabled. Okay, so now I will come over here, hit apply. Okay, let's see. Let's see if it's actually selected now. Let's see if I click here. Okay, so I think okay, so I had the bass selected. All right, I'm just going to reread this, make sure I don't have it backwards. Okay, so let's say property is not set to, is disabled. So let's say now it's going to select every track except the disabled track. So try that. So you want to, on the process, choose select. Container type is equal to track property. Property is not set to is disabled, and that should select every track that is not disabled. So in your 2200, so you don't have to kind of go bug-eyed looking for it. So give that a shot. All right, so we see question. I have a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 sound card. How many Q outputs can I have in a control room? It has one headphone out and one main left and right. So generally you're going to, with a Q, I assume that you want one set of outputs going to the monitors. And if you have those going to the monitors, there's probably not the ability to have the headphones be a separate, distinct output. So I don't think you could, I don't think that you're able to have a Q mix and monitors if you only have two outputs in your audio interface. So you may want to consider an audio interface like, UR44C or something that has like 4 outputs.
Let's see, Michael Pierce is afraid that I'm disappointed in the lack of cheese soup. So I'm fine without cheese in my soup. So I've liked all of your soup recipes so far. So thanks for sharing them. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there a way to resize the export window? Mine is too large and I have to resize it every time I use it. So, if I remember, Michael, like your screen resolution was really small when I did kind of a remote session with you. So, some things that you could do, but, check your actual, if you have it, I think you have it hooked up to a TV. But if you go to your preferences, and this isn't in the Mac version, and we go to general, you could see your high DPI scaling and your scale resolution directly there. So try adjusting that, and then you should be able to kind of see more screen real estate. Once you have the export audio window open, you can do some things like if you have the export queue, sometimes being able to kind of drag, but you can sometimes just grab from the top to be able to resize. But so there are some resizing options that you could do. So if you have the export queue open, you could close that and try to just grab it from the top to resize, but check to make sure what your actual display resolution is, because I thought yours was pretty small, almost like a 66 by 768 or something like that, and you should probably could get a lot more screen real estate on your computer. So so I just see I'm currently typing out the tempo change, but Control T does not apply. I have AI 11. Do I need to upgrade? So let me see if I could get. Don't think. So you could check in the different comparisons. That the AI may not have a dedicated tempo editor, but definitely upgrading. Will give you that functionality, Thomas. All right, so we see Gareth is working late and won't be able to make it to probably until later. So, all right, hopefully Gareth can make it in. Okay, so we see a question, how to create the gradient color track. Okay, so once we go to the project menu, you go to project colors setup. And then there will be different presets that you could use. So you could just choose sort colors by different tints, or if you wanted basic colors, and you could have a lot more different options there. So I'm not sure if that's the gradient. I'm not so good with colors in real life or in, or in just to see if that kind of makes sense. But go to your project color setup, and even from there, if you go to the project color setup, you could just double click, and then here you could go through your different colors wheels here to select different versions of the colors. So I see a question. Did I have time to check to do a selection of stereo audio tracks in a logical editor? I played around with it over the weekend, and I didn't find a way to do it. But I'll kind of take a fresh stab at it and see if there's a way to select. But I'm kind of inclined to think not. But
Okay, so we have a question: how to see all events at the same time without selecting all in a single track MIDI editor. Okay, so if we have, let's take a look. All right, so let's say I have a number of different events here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to select a track and then hit Control E. And then I think we have this option to show the part borders. So let me see if this. So I'll just hit Control or Command E. All right. Let's see. And you could also just do select all on track. Let me just. So if you wanted to do even just kind of create a macro, but I thought that we be able to do it. Let me just try this particular track. Yeah, so if we just have with the range selection, so I just have the object selection tool. At this point, if I hit Control E, I can see everything, all of the different tracks all kind of laid out. And we could activate the different parts as soon as we click on it. So just select the track and hit Control or Command plus E. All right, just reading through some comments. All right. All right. Great that Stable Winters can make it. All right. So I just see, hi, I don't know if it's going to make me look stupid, but is there a way to change how the mixer looks? The default look of the mixer is kind of hard for me to read. So when we, kind of come over here, realize that there's a, tremendous amount of information that you could see at one time. So, we could colorize, different aspects of it. So if you want to go to your preferences, let's say we go to your Cubase preferences here. One of the things you could do is just say, like if you don't have the tracks colorized, and if I go to the correct preference this time, that would help. But you could say the MixConsole channels. So a lot of times people miss this, where, okay, there's a lot of stuff that could be very gray. But if you wanted to see the colors from the project window and have those applied so that if drums are always this color for you and vocals are this color, you could now see those kind of throughout
the throughout the mixer. So that can make a big difference. But a lot of stuff will be kind of fixed. But I think it's pretty. Realize that you may want to close different things or to come over here and add different things that you need to see or don't see. But there's a tremendous amount of information that could be expressed with the kind of user interface design. So you can see a lot of info very quickly and have it accessible. All right, great to see Graham Witcher on the live stream, as well as John Costigan. So you see Sable Winters, it's a beautiful day in San Francisco, 78 degrees. So she's going out for a walk. Enjoyed a nice spring day. We're having beautiful weather here in Washington, D.C. area as well. So. All right, so we have a question. Why Cubase cannot start playing instantly when one presses play. This is useful when remixing or rebanking a track and one needs to match tracks. So, Cubase will, like as I do that, Cubase will play instantly and fast, but a lot of it, there's two factors. One is going to be the buffer size on your audio interface. So if I come here to my audio interface and I set the buffer to 2048 and now I hit play, that is going to add delay. And also when we go to, if you have plugins and, plugins that have a lot of latency, that could add to this delay as well. So, Cubase will, so if you have, for instance, multi-band compressors on tracks here. So let's say we have a couple multi-bands. So just add. Okay, so one of the things that you can do in Cubase Pro is as we go to the MixConsole, you can see a channel latency. So we could just kind of scroll over here. So we could go to the setup window and we can see that those two plugins have added 246.1 milliseconds. So that's almost a quarter of a second. So now when I hit play, we can just, as we do this, it will automatically So it's probably plugins that are causing it. So check the channel latency. Now, one way of kind of mitigating this quickly is to just hit the delay, the constrained delay compensation. So if you have a lot of plugins that are causing latency throughout your mixer and you don't want to go scouring and looking through every single channel, you could just come right over here, and what that'll do is bypass the particular plugins that have a lot of latency for you. So it's going to be your buffer size or plugins that are causing the latency.
All right, so we see question. Can we make Cubase snap to pitch while playing MIDI, not skip some black notes when playing scales with lots of black keys? So if you have it set to, if we have within the MIDI editor itself, so let's say if we're in our editor, if we just say, I want to, snap my live input, we could just, have that automatically achieved. So, but if you're in a key of B major and you hit a C natural, sometimes it may go to B, sometimes it may go to C sharp. So let's say if I want to do a new part here. And let's say we'll use our chord track scale. So we do this. Okay, so we'll be in G sharp. So let's say, so if I wanted to now play, we'll snap our live input. I'll just put it in step mode. Okay, so we're in G sharp. So if I wanted to come here and let's say I play, so I played a G and it's automatically, since it's gonna knock it up. So as I play in G major for a song in A flat, so it will make a decision, which note to stay within key. So, but when I hit a G natural note here, and I'm in a key, let's say, so if I hit a G natural, it will, and while we have that in the, let's say, I'm gonna hit an A natural because we're in G flat. That will automatically knock it up. So it's not skipping the note. It's just positioning it once we have the snap live input enabled. So it doesn't skip the note, but it will just kind of put it in for you and have it automatically line up to the scales. Okay, read through. Okay, so we see it says, question, one more for you, Greg. In the mixing console, I want to add a master fader. How do I do the routing so that the stereo fader feeds the master and the outputs going to the control room? So, once you have your output here, so when we go to our audio connections, we would just say, okay, I wanted this to, if we add another bus, let's say we add a stereo bus here. So we go to the mix console. I could take this stereo out. And then we could route this. So I think probably what you need to do is to send it to, like, what a lot of people would do is to send it to a pre-master group. So send everything here to a group channel and this group channel to the master output. And then, once you have the control room activated, at that point, you would choose for this to not be connected and set up your routing, your connections to your speakers right here in the control room, and then everything is bussed out to the control room. Okay, so we just see from Thomas, love this live sending, learning planets so much, and got the tempo change working. Thanks a lot. That's great. Glad it's useful. All right, so we see what is the best workflow question. What is the best workflow for importing a Cubasis project into Cubase? So there is a Cubasis file importer. So once that's installed, you will just be able to come right over here and say, go to your file menu to import and choose Cubasis project. And then it will load right up. Some people will save it to like a cloud-based solution. You could do that and then just simply download it directly into your computer, but just go to your get the Cubasis file importer and then go to Cubase, go to your file menu to import and then select Cubasis project. Okay, so we see a question. When I'm creating a project, I'm always having to name the .cpr project file when I save. Is there a way that Cubase automatically takes the name of the project folder, perhaps a setting I missed? So it's not, it doesn't automatically take the name from, there isn't a way for it to automatically take the name from the folder. So it's kind of, it's kind of up to the user to, we don't want to automatically create projects to save projects unless the user has instigated it, that initiated that particular, that particular action. So, a lot of times we don't want to necessarily populate stuff automatically. It's kind of, sometimes a bad software design to do that and kind of impose that onto different things. So it's going to be saved manually. All right. So just saying about the situation for the playback with the plugins. Says that doesn't work. Read the solution, but it's not true. Delay happens even with no extensive plugins engaged. So see what happens if you just start a project. Check your buffer size on your audio interface, but let's just say we do create a new project. We'll create empty here and just add 16 audio tracks or something like that. So let's say we'll add 16 audio tracks. And then as you play, see if the delay, if the response time is set up, and also check to make sure what your buffer size is as well on your audio interface. All right. So we see a question. Hey, man, is there a way to have track quick controls assigned to a controller fixed in a way that the track doesn't have to be selected? Okay, so let's say I'm here and I have my quick controls set up. Okay, so I have, say I come here and so that's on audio 16 and I go to audio 15. And I'll just kind of list the same quick controls here. Okay, so let's say I go to audio 16, I do this, and 15 as we edit, we see those particular settings. So I think let's take a look in the new MIDI remote.
So I'll just select this and so I'll say audio 16 and I'll just say lock. So now these settings are locked to that particular channel. So when I go to another channel, the quick controls aren't working with that. You know, if I have quick controls here on these particular tracks, I move my quick control faders, but they're going to be fixed here. So when I go to my mix console, I can see that quick control 1 is only going to be there, but I have the same quick controls on this channel, but my quick control is going to be locked. So in the MIDI remote, what you want to do is just come over here and you'll see the quick control focus track. So we could say, okay, I just wanted to lock the quick controls on that track. So whatever else I have selected, and we could also do that for plugins as well, kind of the opposite way. All right, so we have David Griffiths checking in from North Wales. Thanks for joining us today. And David's question is, I'm about to change from PC to Apple. Will I be able to open up and play all my projects I created in PC in my new Apple Studio with no hassle? Thanks. So there's no problems in taking your Cubase projects over, but make sure that any plugins that you had on your Windows, especially third-party plugins, that you have access to those on your Apple as well. But if it's referencing a plugin in the project that doesn't exist, then it probably won't play back. Okay, so we just see a question. I've extracted the chords of one track and it's okay, but I want the chord to be F sharp instead of G flat, but chord editor doesn't allow me. All right, so let's say I have a chord track here. All right, so say we have it as F sharp and it's now set to G flat. It's kind of annoying. But really all you have to do is select that particular chord, and where you see enharmonic shift, just click on sharp. So right from the info line, you could just come right there and switch it to sharp. So give that a shot. Okay, so we have a question. Says, when I play some audio or loops in the right sidebar, I can't hear it before dragging it to the main one. Thanks a lot. All right, now these are going to be set when we go to the MediaBay here and audition different drum loops. And if we think about this, these loops don't have a home yet. So there's no channel assignment for these to be sent to. So what we need to do in this case is just to use the control room. So if we go to our studio setup, or not the studio setup rather, but to our audio connections. So if you don't have the control room activated, you know, and this seems counterintuitive at first, but what we want to do is to have an output defined. So a lot of times if we do this and I have
this set up to my main mix output, I go to listen. Now, because these audio files aren't actually routed anywhere in the mix console for it to be routed through. So come to the audio connections, set your output here to not connected, go to your control room and activate a monitor. You can right click and add a monitor. And then once you're here, we could just say, let's go to our Steinberg UR24C. It's the interface I'm using. Select that. And now as you click, you could audition through all your loops just that easily. All right, so we see just hope Cubase solves a delay issue in future iteration. It would help certain workflows. So again, I don't think most people have the delay you're running into. If you want to email me a project or a quick video, you could send it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. And I think, you could really check out the scale assistant works really well. All right. So you just see that's exactly what I needed. Googled half a day, couldn't find it. Thanks so much on a track quick control question. And thanks for referencing what the topic was. So sometimes people say, oh, that's a great answer. And I was like, oh, I wish I could remember what it was. But yeah, glad that helped. And that's one of the great new things with the new MIDI remote. So. Okay, so we see what's the best way to arrange a beat in Cubase. So there's, a myriad of, like thousands of different ways of making a beat. But let's say if I just wanted to start off with a beat, so usually I like the drum editor, and I'm kind of making beats that way. And I'm not, I'm a poor suburban kid, but so. But yeah, I remember having to do doing a seminar with Teddy Riley once, and having to make a beat in front of him, in front of like 300 people. So that was interesting. But he made me an honorary beat maker. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll just show you how. Let's say if I have just a quick drum part here, and I'll just solo my drums. All right, so I will just go into the drum editor. So for my particular drum kit here, I'll just kind of put it in, and we could audition sounds just by kind of coming directly. And let me just go ahead and switch some of the mixing on the instrument itself quickly, so it's less annoying. All right, so okay, so I will just kind of come over here. So we could audition your different drum sounds.
So let's say, okay, I want to start with a C1. So I come here, let's put this on. So say I want my clap on beat 2 and 4. And I'll just kind of come over here. Let's say I'll just put in a quick. And then you could just kind of. So you could do just kind of stuff like that and just kind of paint stuff in very easily to make beats. So there's a number of different ways of approaching that, but that's an easy way. All right, so we have a question. One thing that's been driving me nuts a few times is when I drag a MIDI loop into an instrument track, like from easy keys or addictive drums, etc. Cubase always creates an additional track underneath. Can I disable that? So all you have to do is go to your preferences, and because it's only using standard MIDI files. When you do this, we want to say go to preferences to MIDI file, and then you'll see destination. You could just say you want it to go to an instrument track, and then it's not going to automatically add like a Hallian Sonic instance. So just go to file, or I'm sorry, go to your preferences under MIDI file, and under destination, choose instrument tracks, and then you could just drag it directly there. So, and it won't create another track. And the intention is if you have like standard, like general MIDI files, that it will, when you import it, it will automatically load up a Hallian Sonic SE in a general MIDI bank. But if you're using something like easy keys, or, at that point you could just kind of drag it over and just write onto it if you change that preference. All right, so we see from David Griffiths, sorry if this has been asked a few times. I have an Arturia Keylab 49. Some of the transport buttons can't be assigned in MIDI remote. How can I change back to using the Mackie map I was using? So if you wanted to, like if you have transport functions that are defined, I could just come right over here. Let's just jump, let's say, to my Nectar. And if I wanted to define these, we could do this in the MIDI mapping. So we'll come over here, and we could just actually, if you click up here in the upper left hand corner, we could just select the particular event here.
So, anything that kind of just spits out MIDI information will automatically be working just like that. So if you said, okay, this is record, you could try to come over here and just say, pick up for MIDI remote and apply. So if you right click on, let's say, the play button here, if that's working, at this point, we could just say, okay, play. And I'm going to go to the play button and pick up for MIDI remote and then apply the mapping. So now when I come over here, I can just hit play, record, and those functions will just work. So if you wanted to disable those particular functions there, you could just hit the button while in the mapping assistant and then just click on the trash can. Now, it could be that those particular functions, sometimes transport will work on a different MIDI port, or, so that you could have, the transport do Mackie control and then the other things. So you should be able to, anything that transmits MIDI out. Now, if it's not seeing it, it could be that it's already assigned to a Mackie control. So if you wanted to delete it, you could just select the particular function while in the mapping assistant and click on the little trash can to remove that particular function. But it could be that it's not working maybe because it is already set up for the Mackie control. So when you go to your studio menu to studio setup, at this point you could go to your Mac, see if you have a Mackie control already configured. So if you have a Mackie control here that's routed to your Arturia, turn that off and just use the MIDI remote. Or if you have disabled those, just come over here and then you could assign the Mackie control again. So. All right, so you see Gareth is on the live stream. Glad you can make it. So he says, thanks for a new audio warp vid for Cubase 12. Definitely great improvements. So yeah, and thank you for the working so expertly playing badly timed guitar parts for the project song. So I appreciate that, Gareth. But yeah, so there is I did a new kind of walkthrough video. So I did like 8 of them for the release of Cubase 12. So I think they're going to be starting to be rolled out now. Not sure why there's a delay. It's just probably a lot of stuff with release. So look for those if you want to see more details just on kind of new audio warping functions in Cubase. So we see when moving from Mac to PC, the path to audio files changes. Is there a relative path mode or setting to make working between Mac and PC easier relative rather than absolute audio path? So what it does when you're looking, when you import a project, so let's say we go to our folder here, and we look at, let's say, a project. So I'll just come over here and let's go to our projects folder. So let's say if I'm here and I go to the projects folder, when I open up a particular project, it will look for the audio files, the images, and different XML files, track pictures, all from folders at the same level as the project. So when you go to a different platform, as long as you open up this particular file, it's going to look for the audio folder in relation to this particular at the same relative level. So if you just move a particular project here, like the folder, so let's say if I'm here, we could just say I just wanted to do this, and I could see all the different files here. So I moved the folder over, and as soon as I open up the project, if the audio is kind of at a folder in the project folder at the same level as the project file, then all those will just open up without having to do any worrying about defining where the audio files are, where this, as long as it's kind of at the same relative level. And I think Ed, I just saw them. I'll see, but I think I just want to make sure I didn't miss a question you asked earlier. I thought I read one as I was kind of scrolling through, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. So if I missed a question from you, Ed, earlier, I just kind of saw your name again, and I was like, oh, did I answer Ed's question? So I'm going to quickly scroll back and see if I could catch it. Bear with me just a second as I... Okay, so I think it was about the tempo track. Okay, so I think I got that okay. Just finding my spot. Okay, just reading through more comments here. All right, so I just see a question. Can you show me what's in EDM Toolbox? All right, so I think it's just kind of different content loops. So let's go ahead and take a listen to some. All right, so these are a lot of different MIDI loops. So let's go ahead and these will take it a second to kind of load up. So instead of being audio loops, these are MIDI that play back with included virtual instruments. So the instrument will load up, the patch will load up, so it's not as instantaneous. So different kind of little song building beats and patterns for you to work with. So Raid Belaner. So wonder where that idea may have come from. So little like kind of songwriting basics. And so again, these are just different. So if I wanted to take this in, so if we do this, it's probably just going to be maybe a Hallian sonic instrument or retrolog. So now we come over here, that will just play. So it's just MIDI information. It's kind of, so different MIDI loops. Okay, so I just see question. When I'm stretching an audio file to fit my project tempo, I choose the stretch tool from the tools menu. Is there a special keyboard button to activate the stretch tool only while it's pressed? So you can define, so, there's three different, when we go into your selection tool, like the object selection tool, there's three different modes. There's normal sizing, sizing moves contents, or sizing applies time stretch. So if I hit one, it'll just kind of cycle between those. But sometimes people didn't want it to cycle, and whenever they hit one, they just wanted it to always be a specific area. So if we go to your key commands, we could just come over here and we could specify which tool. So we could say when we go to the selection tool at this point, we could say, so let's say I'll just assign, I think we could assign a different key just to let me see. Okay, so I'll just assign. So you could just come right over here and just do the, object selection tool time stretch and assign the key command there. And you could also set it so that when you hit one, it will go to just the object selection tool. Or when you hit one, you could assign it to only go to, sizing applies, normal sizing or selection tool, or sizing moves contents. So you could assign that under tools right there. All right, so we're just saying I'm a beginner in Cubase, so I hope I'm not being annoying. So no, everyone started at the same spot, and we're here. And even advanced users will learn new things from beginners' questions and vice versa. So, ask any question you want, anything you need to run your Cubase better. We're here to help you. Okay, so just see from Thomas, I had to take my dog out, so I may have missed this, but how do I adjust the volume in a track? All right, so, and again, we could do this through automation. So let's say if I just have this particular drum loop going on. So let's say we have this, and I wanted to adjust the volume. So if you wanted to do it via automation, we could, click on the fader here, and then as we're playing, we could just say, okay, I wanted to click on W, and then I could record these changes. So now as we come right back, it'll play back kind of perfectly in time. So, and we could open up the automation lane manually. So if I just say, okay, I wanted to take, let's say I have my object selection tool here, and I say, oh, I just want to grab this section and move it up or down in volume. We could do that. Or I just want to take this selection and make all those automations less or more. We could do stuff like that as well. And you could also just on a clip, if you select a clip, you could come right over here and adjust volume on a clip level. So there's a number of different ways of doing that. Okay, so we see, hey Greg, is the ID tag in the audio mixdown customizable, and can you add more tags to it? So there is a standard with the ID3 tags. So again, if you're not familiar with this, we often see this in like the export for like
we have like an MP3 defined here, and you'll have the edit ID3 tag. So there is this is a particular standard set of functions. So a lot of hardware, if you put a custom tag in, won't actually be recognized or be read by a lot of different services. So a lot of people want to put custom tags in there, but these are a standard set of genres and tags. So we don't allow, just to make sure that it's going to be read and be able to be categorized correctly. We use the industry standard ID3 tags for that. Okay, so we see I can't hear my samples, but I can hear metronome. Anybody know why? So if you're auditioning your samples in, we just may have covered this a couple minutes ago, but if you have different audio files that you want to hear directly here in the MediaBay, make sure that when you go to your studio, go to audio connections, and you want to make sure that your stereo output, if you're running like Cubase Pro, is set to not connected, and that you set up instead, you want to add a monitor and then set that monitor to be connected. Because right now, this audio file that we're auditioning is kind of homeless in regards to like where it's going to be routed to, because it hasn't been defined because it's not in a particular track. So we see Pablo is rehearsing and programming for a summer concert season. So that's great. We miss seeing Pablo on the live streams. Maybe next Tuesday will be our Zoom meetup. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. All right, so we see Pablo is finishing dinner, so glad you could pop in real quick. All right, so we see a question. How do I get all my VST plugins into one folder on Windows 11? Any tutorial online? So if you want to, so I'm not sure if you want to see it in one folder in Cubase or one folder. So when we go to your VST plugin manager, we can come and we'll see like a little information or settings cogwheel here. So if we wanted to just come here, we could see kind of all of your VST2 plugin paths that you could tell Cubase to look for. As we work with this, VST3 plugins are kind of put into a common unified folder, but we could also make your own custom plugin collection. So if we wanted to make a plugin collection, we could call this empty, and I'll say, monster plugin folder or whatever. So, and then once I'm here, I could just say, okay, I want to drag, just dragged it out of the window, but we'll go to our VST plugin manager, and then I could drag these into, and everything would be at one folder level. And if you wanted to add folders, you could add subfolders, but you could just come right over here and make your own plugin collection if you wanted to see everything not in folders. So.
See Graham Witcher just saying MIDI mapping any controller is a fantastic move by Steinberg, although I feel my CC121 may become slightly redundant. Never. So I think the CC121 will always be still strong and cool. All right, so we have the whole hot mess group here, so it's great. Great to be connected again. So just see a question. I purchased the full paid version of Groove Agent in Cubase 12 Pro. And is recommended to download Groove Agent SE. If I don't, will the full version I purchased cover the need? So yeah, we could think of the Groove Agent SE as being a subset of all of the features of the full Groove Agent. So, you know, you probably don't need to, if you have the full Groove Agent and, you know, you can get by without doing the Groove Agent SE. So you're not missing anything with that. All right, I know we had a couple questions that were mailed in, so let me get to those before we wrap up in a couple minutes. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. And if you have learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. Okay, so he says, I have a question. This is more for applied to a singer-songwriter than a recording engineer. Let's say I record an acoustic guitar track, which is not perfectly in tempo, but not bad either. If I want to add some basic drums quick to start building the idea, not to lose my inspiration, can you show how to detect a tempo and add some drums from Groove Agent SE to follow that not perfect recorded guitar part? I usually open Groove Agent and not sure what to do. Thanks. All right, so let's go take a look. I think I may have some files that will fluctuate enough. Okay, so let's say I have like an acoustic guitar, singer-songwriter kind of vibe here. Yeah, I put on my click track and there's no, it's not really following. She was my kind of cute, like. All right, so I'll do a tempo detection. All right, so divided by 2. Kind of cute, I like the way she smiled. She was gonna stay here and hang for a while. Started thinking about some words to say, but when I turned my head, she was walking away. Okay, so let's say now I just want to define my downbeat here. So we're gonna have, again, fluctuating tempo. Okay, so we'll put our 4/4, not there, just. She was my kind of cute, like. Okay, so we did a tempo detection, so we have fluctuations here, and let's go ahead and add a Groove Agent. All right, so now what I want to do is just have Groove Agent. I'm going to just click on Follow Transport. So as soon as we kind of just come right over here, and I will just switch maybe like a different pattern.
She was my kind of cute, I liked the way she smiled. She was gonna stay here, I hang for a while. Started thinking
yeah, we can see that Groove Agent's now following the tempo.
She was walking away. So I got in my car and I tracked her down to a shady little dive on the outskirts of town. She was at the bar drinking a stout when I caught her catching me, checking her out. And she said, I'm not looking.
So you could do stuff like that. So once you kind of do the tempo map, then, you know, just kind of put Groove Agent on, select a pattern, and click on Follow Transport, and then you should be all set. All right. So a question: is it possible to, when you have two MIDI containers and a MIDI track, and you have a volume set on the first one, to view the volume on the second container? I know the volume of the second one is going to be the same same as the first one, but I didn't find a way to actually see it even in light gray in the second container. Okay, so let's take a look. So I think if there isn't volume information, you may not see it, but let's go ahead and take a quick look. Okay, so I activate this project. Okay, so let's say I have a double click here. So let's say in this, at the beginning of this event, I wanted to set a MIDI volume. So let's say I just set my main volume MIDI CC message to kind of start off. Okay, so we have our volume message here. So now when we want to look at other parts, so let's say if I double click here, I probably won't see the volume because this part doesn't, you know, when we double click, we're actually double clicking on and showing the events that are here. So they're not going to show the volume, but let's say if I wanted to, again, select all of these events, I'll just shift, double click. And now when we go to edit, I can see that we'll have our volume message here, set here, even though we could see all of the other events. But, you know, if there's no volume message to be shown, if there's no volume, you know, data in this particular event, it shouldn't show data that isn't there that's being carried over. But if you select all of the events on the particular track, then you could see where the volume was in relation to other parts that don't have volume. So another question: is it possible to move tracks directly from the MixConsole window? I often need to move a track left or right to reorganize my MixConsole, and I can't do it from the MixConsole window. I have to show them in a project window, reorganize the tracks, and then hide them. It's not very fast to do, especially when you have a lot of tracks. I have to be precise is that most of my audio tracks are buses from a VE Pro session. So currently, to move tracks in the project in the MixConsole, you know, it has to be done on the project window. So we could just move your tracks like that, but not from within the MixConsole window. Sorry about that. I know it's a popular request. All right, let me jump back to our live questions. Again, thanks for all the wonderful questions. If you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. So let me just, sorry about that. Let me just mute that. I'll jump over back to the live questions here. And Pablo, of course, is getting coffee, and I have a couple minutes left. It's unfair. So,
just reading through comments. All right, so I see a question. Is there any way to reorganize VST instrument appearance on the left slot? Thanks to keep it up. So I'm not sure if it's, if you see the appearance on the left, but if maybe it's when you come over here and you see VST instruments and you can see kind of the different windows. So maybe it's this, but if you wanted to kind of change, so let's say if I added a pad shop preset here and I wanted to have a different picture, all you have to do is kind of click on the little, add, you'll see a little picture icon here. So it's not on the left side, but it's on the right side. But if you wanted to change the picture, you could update them by clicking on the little picture or the camera icon rather directly there. Okay, so we have a question. When I record in loop, how can I choose between the takes? Okay, so this would be like almost a comping paradigm. So okay, so when let's say we've done multiple takes here. So what I want to do is so we'll see this little button in here that's called Show Lanes. And if you don't see it, you could go to your track control settings and make sure that you have Show Lanes. If it's hidden, make sure that it's over there. And then what you do is each take, so this would be take 1, take 2, take 3, we could just select. And if we wanted to select the little hand tool, this is a comp tool, we could now just come over here and select different parts of each comped take. And you could just say, oh, I just want to like this one, let's do this one. I want that one to last to there. And we could just have everything kind of automatically set up that way. All right, so we see, hi Greg, what is the red measurement at the bottom right of your window? So maybe it's, let me just play a little bit. So it could be, let's see if I clip it here. If we, so this, if you're looking at that, that's just clipping. So realize that you could kind of clip and often not hear it because of the 32-bit floating point engine, but here's that red there, if that's what you're asking about, is just indicating that the master bus is clipping. All right, just reading through. Okay, so I just see a question, just a quick follow-up.
Question to the QC lock. Can you have it so it controls multiple tracks at once? So, you can think of the quick controls as being kind of dedicated to one particular track. So it's if you have multiple tracks, it's gonna kind of do to the highest selected track, because there could be all sorts of kind of problematic workflow issues if you have quick controls being sent unexpectedly. People who have quick control set up on, like, oh, I have quick control 8 here in this track, and then it's something else on a different track. So it gets to be a whole kind of other ball worm. So currently the quick controls are kind of set up for a single track, but you could lock it to a particular track now. So let's see, is there I see a question. Is there a keyboard shortcut to clear the red indicator when the master is clipping? I think if you just go to reset meters, let's see if it's, so reset meters. So let's see if there's a keyboard shortcut that could be done for it. Yeah, so you could do meters reset, and that would be under the mixer category for keyboard shortcuts. All right, so with that, I think we're just about out of time, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everyone for the great questions. I hope everyone's learned a tip or trick. So we will be, a week from today, we will have our end of month Zoom meetup. So it'll be 2 hours of the live stream and 2 hours or 3 or 4 of the Zoom meetup afterwards. And after that, I will be on vacation, so I'll miss like April 1st through the following week. I'll be on vacation with my family, so we'll kind of kick up, I think, maybe April 12th again. So I just want to give everyone kind of a heads up with that. But I want everyone to please stay safe and healthy, and we will see everyone on Friday's live stream, and look forward to meeting a bunch of new people on the Zoom meetup, which is kind of a social way for everyone to kind of hang out and hear someone else talk besides me. So thanks for all the great questions, and we'll see everyone on Friday. Take care.